Well, good morning and welcome to the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. My name is Christina Shudd and I am the Executive Director of this institution. Thank you. I have to say, while it's only my 8th day on the job, I can't think of a better way to spend it than being with you all for this truly special event. The Juneteenth legislation before the governor is important on its own, but it carries a special resonance for us here at the Presidential Library and Museum because of its direct connection to Abraham Lincoln and his vision for an America without slavery. With the Emancipation Proclamation, he made ending slavery an official goal of the Civil War. He transformed a battle for the nation's survival into a battle for the nation's soul. And while Lincoln alone didn't end slavery, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, both black and white, fought to make freedom possible. Enslaved people, through their very bodies, fought to ensure that the generations who followed them would have a new birth of freedom. You can't truly understand Abraham Lincoln's impact and legacy on America without hearing those stories. And we look forward to telling more of them in the future. We have a signed copy of the Emancipation Proclamation here with us today. And I have to imagine President Lincoln will be proud to say and to see it here as the governor of his home state signs legislation establishing a holiday celebrating the end of slavery.
All right.
And with that,
Thank you very much, Director Shutt. On behalf of the people of the state of Illinois, I am so proud to welcome you and your family here to Springfield and to our state. The ALPLM is a national gem and it has awaited your historic leadership. Great things are poised to happen here, and we all look forward to the new and innovative ways that this museum will continue to bring Abraham Lincoln to life for the millions of people who will visit here in the coming years. It is always a special privilege for me to recognize Leader Kimberly Lightford and Representative LaShawn Ford for their tireless work to ensure that Illinois would recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday and to make Illinois a national leader in confronting racism with real policy changes that will improve the lives of all Illinoisans. I'm always proud to be together with my partner in governance, our Lieutenant Governor, Juliana Stratton, with my friend Chris Welch, fresh off his historic first session as our state's first Black Speaker of the House. Our hosts, Senator Doris Turner and Representative Sue Scherer, in whose districts we stand, House Majority Conference Chair LaToya Greenwood, Senators Adrian Johnson and Chris Belt, and Representatives Maurice West and Lakeisha Collins, Rita Mayfield, David Welter, Debbie Myers-Martin, Nick Smith, Camille Lilly, Mark Batnick, Jeff Kiker, Cyril Nichols, and Marcus Evans. I don't know how you take roll in the House of Representatives. I also want to recognize the longstanding advocacy of the Illinois Juneteenth Committee.
Yay, yay.
Represented today by founding member Marjorie Adam Clark, as well as those many, many individuals who have taken it upon themselves to bring awareness about Juneteenth to their communities. 2 of them are here with us today. Forest Park Mayor Rory Hoskins.
All right.
Mayor Hoskins was involved in the effort to make Juneteenth a paid holiday for Cook County employees, along with Commissioners Deere and Lowry and more. and Tommy Meeks, who has been organizing Juneteenth celebrations and awareness events in the Rockford community for more than 30 years. Behind me to my left sits a rare copy of the Emancipation Proclamation, upon which 159 years ago, President Abraham Lincoln put pen to paper, thereby declaring all residents of the Confederacy thenceforth and forever free. Every resident. The words inscribed in Lincoln's proclamation intended to mean that black women and men and children whose blood, tears, and enslavement were shed to help build this nation should finally be freed from bondage. President Lincoln meant every man, woman, and child who had been forced to work in a field under awful conditions. Every mother forced to hand over her children into another generation of slavery. Every person whose labor was stolen to enrich a white master. He meant every black person beaten, every black woman raped, every black child orphaned. For a nation that had for so long allowed brutality and injustice to be visited on some Americans to enrich others, the proclamation represents a seminal moment in the moral arc of the universe bending toward justice. But change requires so much more than just words on paper. President Lincoln's executive order and proclamation meant that every person in the Confederate States should have been freed right away. But as the history of Juneteenth reminds us, it took more than 2 years after Lincoln signed it before it would be enforced in places like Texas at the edge of the Confederacy and the Union. Today, even a full 156 years after the 13th Amendment formally and constitutionally declared slavery illegal throughout the entire United States, we all know what it means to see justice as yet undelivered. And every day we see our nation's past failures reverberate through the soul of our nation. But we are not without hope, and Illinois can bring hope to the rest of the nation. Just as Illinois led the nation as the first state to ratify the 13th Amendment ending slavery in 2021, we are leading the nation in tackling structural racism now, head on, thanks to the guiding vision of Leader Lightford and Representative Ford and Speaker Welch. It has been my honor to stand with the ILBC as an advocate and as an ally, and I was proud to sign into law the caucus's 4 pillars of reform: criminal justice reform, education and workforce development reform, healthcare and human services reform, and economic access, equity, and opportunity. And today, it brings me exceptional pride that in a few moments I will sign into law the declaration of Juneteenth as a formal state holiday in Illinois, making us one of the few states in the nation to give it the full status that it deserves.
All right.
Illinois will continue the recognition of Juneteenth throughout the state, lowering all flags covered by the Illinois Flag Display Act to half-staff on Saturday. In addition, Secretary of State Jesse White and I are proud to announce that this year and every year henceforth, a Juneteenth flag will fly proudly over our state capitol here in Springfield.
Yeah.
These advancements are yet another essential step in our journey toward justice. With this new law, no longer can a child grow up in Illinois without learning about Juneteenth in school. With this change, the people of Illinois will have a day to reflect on how the freedom that we celebrate just 2 weeks later on the 4th of July was delayed to Black Americans. and in many ways is delayed still. This weekend, as the calendar turns to June 19th, 2021, I urge all Americans to find some time to learn more about the history of Juneteenth, about black codes, about the Springfield race riot and the founding of the NAACP, and the reasons why our beloved dream of freedom and opportunity for all is not yet truly, fully realized. I encourage everyone to start right here in Springfield at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum, where the Emancipation Proclamation is on display for all to see through July 6th. I cannot encourage you strongly enough to come here. This is a rare and fragile piece of our country's history. There are only a handful of copies of the Emancipation Proclamation in the world. It is our privilege as Illinoisans to house this great document, and it is our sacred responsibility to keep its moral compass alive in our own times, especially as we become a leader in the nation in the depth of our recognition of this new Juneteenth state holiday. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my great pleasure to introduce a steadfast advocate for honoring history and a change maker in her own right, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton.
All right.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you, Governor Pritzker. You know, I was thinking back to last year in the wake of George Floyd's tragic murder, when we joined people across our state and our nation and the globe in protest and demanding equal justice under the law for all. And I remember at one of those marches, you boldly proclaimed that Juneteenth would become a state holiday in Illinois, and here we are today. Thank you for keeping your word. The governor has already acknowledged our esteemed speakers and those joining us today, so in the interest of time, I'll just say to all of our special guests, it's always an honor to stand with you and work alongside of you on behalf of the people of Illinois. I certainly do want to acknowledge chief sponsors of House Bill 3922, Senate Majority Leader Kimberly Lightford and Representative LaShawn Ford. You both have done a remarkable job, and because of you, Illinois will observe Juneteenth National Freedom Day. There are so many others who joined you in this effort. Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch, the entire Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, the Illinois General Assembly from both sides of the aisle, the Illinois Juneteenth Committee. Thank you all for your hard work in ensuring that Illinois officially celebrates and honors Juneteenth. And before I begin my formal remarks, I do want to take a moment to welcome Director Christina Schutt. You and your entire team at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum have been such gracious hosts to us today, and it's only fitting that we are here in the presence of a signed copy of the Emancipation Proclamation celebrating Black freedom and liberation. It seems that there's not a day that goes by that I do not recollect that I am the descendant of enslaved people only 4 generations removed. It seems that there's not a day that goes by that in my work to advance justice, equity, and opportunity for all Illinoisans, that I don't reflect on the fact that those in my bloodline did their work in the fields of Mississippi from sun up to sundown, brutalized, being torn from their children, forbidden from learning to read, spending all day, every day working to build wealth for those who owned them as their personal property. And I think about how they must have prayed for our freedom. There must have been days that they never imagined it for themselves, but they prayed that their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren and those of us standing here today, that we would one day be free. that we wouldn't have to live under those conditions, that we would have autonomy to make decisions, that we would live together with our own families and on our own land and be educated, that we would no longer be viewed as property but as human beings who deserve safety and equality and prosperity and, yes, freedom. That perhaps one day their descendants might make history as Illinois' first Black lieutenant governor, or the first Black Speaker of the House, or the first Black woman to serve as Senate Majority Leader, or the first Black Executive Director of the Abraham Lincoln Presidential University. Between January 1st, 1863, when the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect, and June 19, 1865, 2.5 years later, when 2,000 federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, to finally proclaim freedom to the enslaved people whose blood, sweat, and tears were still being used to make their owners rich. This was the true Independence Day. This was Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a time of celebration. Juneteenth is a time of telling our stories of hope. Juneteenth is a declaration of faith that despite chattel slavery, we will never stop fighting for freedom. That despite Black codes right here in Illinois that discourage free Blacks to live in this state, we will never stop fighting for freedom. That despite lynchings and other forms of racialized violence that happened blocks away from where we stand right now, that we would never stop fighting for freedom. That despite race riots here in Springfield in 1908, in East St. Louis in 1917, Chicago in 1919, and Cairo in 1967, where our people were murdered and our businesses and homes destroyed, that we will never stop fighting for freedom. And in the face of mass incarceration and ever-increasing wealth gaps and a pandemic that laid bare the long-time inequities in housing and education and healthcare, that we will never stop fighting for freedom. Neither the Emancipation Proclamation nor the Declaration of Freedom on the first Juneteenth, and not even the 13th Amendment, allowed us as Black people to fully embody the freedom that we all deserve. Rather, we celebrate Juneteenth to acknowledge the deep faith and strength of our ancestors that propelled us to this moment. And it is a time to come together in every community of our state to recommit to and work towards the highest ideals of freedom for all. Dr. Maya Angelou said, "The more you know your history, the more liberated you are." Juneteenth National Freedom Day will help ensure every Illinoisan knows our history, and that future generations know our history, and that in itself is liberating. Thank you to the bill sponsors. Thank you to the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus for your tremendous leadership. Thank you to the members of the General Assembly, and thank you to all of you who helped advocate for this bill. And thank you, Governor Pritzker, for signing House Bill 3922 into law. It is just one more example that we truly are our ancestors' wildest dreams. It is now my honor to introduce one of the champions of the bill, my friend and a tremendous advocate for justice.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It is truly an honor to be here with Governor Pritzker today and with Lieutenant Governor Stratton and all the legislators. I serve as mayor of a town called Forest Park, just outside of Chicago, that is ably represented by Speaker Welch, Leader Lightfoot, and Representative Ford. So thank you to my friends and our leaders in Springfield and in the entire Black Caucus and legislation. Galveston is my hometown. In 1980, we had the first celebration of Juneteenth as an official state holiday. It's extremely important when the government unit stamps a holiday as an official holiday. It lets the people know that the jurisdiction they live in affirms their history. So thank you, Governor. Some of the speakers have talked about, the horrors of slavery. But then there was a lot after that. This country, unfortunately, wanted to bury Black achievement in a lot of ways. When I was a child growing up in Galveston, in 1980, Juneteenth was kind of new to me. I was 9 years old. And our history classes had a Black male history teacher. I think it was 10th grade. And he taught our class, an integrated class, about Juneteenth. None of the white children knew what Juneteenth was. They said, Mr. Weaver, why do they call it Juneteenth? He says, well, June 19th is the way Black people said Juneteenth. We have a more rhythmic way of doing it. So that's the way he explained it to the children. Governor, when we used to go on field trips, we would have the opportunity to buy Confederate money. Why would Black school children want to buy Confederate money? But that was the reality of the South in the 1980s. My university, the University of Texas, was a shrine to the Confederacy. Big statues of Confederate generals rearing back on horses with sabers. I don't think I went a day in school without seeing some student with a Confederate shirt. So this is a hugely symbolic gesture for the state of Illinois, my new home state, to adopt the Juneteenth tradition as a state holiday. So Governor, thank you. It's my understanding that you're ready to sign the bill.
Down the front, please.
Just making sure.
We're on to the bill. Okay, I'm going to take the podium so we can take a couple questions.
Is this on camera? Lieutenant Governor has been a model for the way that we move as Illinois Juneteenth Committee. She told us that if we want to go fast, you go along, but what do we do if we want to go far? We gotta go together. Absolutely.
Yes. And listen, are you all the ones that did the exhibit at the museum right now?
No.
No? Who is that group?
That's us.
That's you?
We got that Black exhibit.
Come here, look.
She had to go to work.
Y'all are very yours.
Yeah, and then you know you came to St. Louis for our
Yes.
We love you.
Yes.
One more.
I'm an R3 grantee.
Thank you.